Let's get started with the Brandmotion webinar focused on our blind spot products. So today we're going to focus on product category overview, the product features, advantages, and benefits, and really what this is how to sell. Then we'll move into some product specifications and some system limitations, and then we'll wrap things up. So should be a pretty brief call today, to about a half hour worth of material. If you do have any questions, one thing I will show is we have a Brandmotion chat on the website. So if you were to open up a new slide, go to brandmotion.com. Give it a sec to go to our homepage. In the bottom right corner, there's going to be a chat box. If you do have any questions during the length of this webinar, please feel free to send in any questions right here. Click, type in your first name, the email address, and then your question. We're both trying to test the functionality of this and use it as a efficient way to get to questions. So if you do have any questions, feel free to submit them throughout. All right, so getting into it. Today on the call, my name is Adam DeGroat. I'm a member of the account relationship team. I'm joined as well with my counterpart, Zach Seidel. He's a member of the technical sales and support team. Turn the camera over to him to
hello everyone.
As also a part of our team, we do have Siobhan Foster as a part of customer service, as well as our boss who we report to, Lucas Frank, who is the sales and service manager. So primarily, if you are working with Brandmotion, you'll typically be working with the account relationship team, as we are mostly customer-facing roles. However, we do have several other departments that you may end up working with during your time partnering with Brandmotion. You may also run into returns department, technical support, accounting, product development, the warehouse and shipping department, our wire harness builders, and then we do have another half of the business called connected vehicles. I won't dive into a lot today, but if you'd like to learn more about the company, feel free to follow the link, and you can learn more about Brandmotion and its origin. So really what we're focusing on here today is two products. One of our larger products as a company, or product categories, I should say, with the category being radar blind spot. We have two units, one universal and one vehicle specific. The first of which is the RDBS 1500, a universal product. Essentially what this is radar sensors that get mounted behind the rear fascia, mounted at 45 degrees, which protrude outwards, as you can see in the diagram there, about a 45-degree angle, with A-pillar indicators to allow you to be alerted when there is someone in your blind spot zone. So it's really intended to mimic OEM quality and feel. This is actually an OEM sourced product without giving you our information. It is from an OEM supply chain. So we'll dive into some specifics on the differences of them, their perks, benefits, and in what the consumer benefit is. And then lastly, we'll get into a few limitations the systems do have that we'd be remiss not to mention. So first up, we got the RDBS 1500. So I've laid out what this is the features, advantages, and benefits, or the FAB, as you could call it. So laid out up at the top, we've got the RDBS 1500 part number, UPC code, installation time. Side note, both of these products we do recommend for professional installation only. This is not a DIY product or something that you should just do in the free time. It's definitely going to require a skilled laborer somewhere that focuses on 12-volt installation or radio, stop-start, remote start, anything of the sort that's related to 12-volt installation. We would recommend or require a trained professional such as that to install. So a couple of the features I'll touch on are the A-pillar indicators. The advantage of these is really just the easy to spot indicator. You can view at all times. So it keeps the constant lookout of your blind spots with A-pillar indicators always in your sight. So you can feel comfortable as you're driving down the road. You know, you got your hands on the steering wheel and your peripherals. You've got your A-pillar indicators. So when they're lit up orange, you will see that someone's in your zone. And we'll have a picture of what those A-pillar indicators look at in a little bit. Secondly, the system only reads when it's above 15 miles an hour. So why is this important? Let's say you're in a parking lot and you're going about 5 miles an hour, or you're driving down your neighborhood street going 7 or 8 miles an hour. You don't want to be getting a blind spot trigger then, because hopefully you're not going to be merging without looking when you're going at that speed anyways. So the system is designed to be in effect over 15 miles an hour. Another caveat to that is that when it's below 15 miles an hour, it's in what we call cross detection mode. So this is designed for when you're, let's say, backing out of a spot in a high traffic parking lot. The example I like to give is, let's say you're going to the mall, you parked in, you've got, you know, a big car to your right and your left, and as you're backing up, you're looking over your shoulder to try to see if there's someone coming behind you, and you can't see because those cars are prohibiting your view. So what this cross traffic detection system does is it points out outward down the aisle in both directions, so it's searching for other vehicles. So as the A-pillar indicator lights up in this detection mode, you'll know that downward in that horizontal view that your sensor has, it detects a vehicle and it is telling you to not back up. So this is a extremely popular system. It's in a lot of vehicles. I think 2015 and after is when they really started to get popular. For myself, I have a 2018 Buick, and it features this. It's one of my favorite features in my vehicle is the cross traffic detection mode. Something else we wanted to touch on is the alert type. It is both audible and visual. So anybody who could be seeing or hearing impaired, you don't have to worry about it because you're going to get a visual alert as well as an audible alert. So it's going to beep, beep, beep when you sees a car as well as light up. So you definitely have coverage on your detection types. It also looks only one lane over. So that is actually pretty important for when you're driving down the road. You don't want to have too much detection, because if you're looking 2 lanes over, you could get a false trigger that would tell you, hey, you might not want to merge your lane. There's someone over there. But really, they're 2 lanes over. And if you really need to get over, you've got an exit coming up in a half mile, then really what that is a false trigger, and the product wouldn't be working to our standards. So we've got it shrinked up to just 1 lane over for detection zone. So it really will give you the best possible outcome. Along with that detection range or zone, it is 1 lane over, but how far back does it go? It goes 40 feet. So one of the biggest complaints we get when people call in looking for a radar blind spot system is they say, hey, Adam, I just got a, whatever, maybe let's say a Honda Accord. My radar system only goes back about 15 feet. So what's the problem with that? Let's say I'm going down, a big highway around Michigan, I-75, speed limit's 75 miles an hour. Well, if I'm only detecting someone 15 feet behind me, you guys do the math. How long does it take you to go 15 feet moving at 75 miles an hour? That is a very small window of detection that your system would provide. Now, at 40 feet, that's more than 2 times longer of a detection zone that our system could pick up with them moving at a rate of 75 miles an hour. So really what that's really good for is highway driving, and that's where the system really shines, on the highway when you really need that the radar blind spot system to work. Something else that's important is it does ignore stationary objects. Let's say you're going down the highway, you're on the right lane closest to the median, and there's a big light pole that you're going by. Some systems would give you a false trigger and say, hey, we just saw something in your blind spot, look out for it, might give you a quick beep and scare you. Our system will not be activated by a stationary object. 2 last things we wanted to touch on with this one. 1 is the harness length, and 2 is the frequency. So we've got a 15-foot harness length. Why is that important? Because it's going to determine the vehicles that the system will work with. So that 15 feet is from the sensor mount, which is on the rear fascia behind the bumper, all the way up to the front OBD2 port where it is plugged in. We'll touch on a little bit about what that OBD2 port is and what the requirements are for it. But that's one important specification to know about this unit, is that it is 15 feet from the sensor to the port. Lastly, the 24 gigahertz frequency. We always like to present this information just in case any of you are using a scanner for police scanner, speed scanner, whatever it may be. Sometimes it may interfere if they're operating on the same frequency. So we do recommend to just double check that. Moving on to the 1520, you're going to see a lot of similarities in the features, advantages, and benefits between these 2 products. Why is that? So I actually brought a couple of the products with us today just to do a little bit of a show and tell, to really demonstrate what the similarities are. So right here, I've got a box for the RDBS 1500. So inside of here, you got your harness, your mount, And this is what we're looking for right here, the sensor. So you can see it's pretty small. These would get mounted at a 45-degree angle in the vehicle in the 1500. So these would be bare, covered by the rear fascia on the 1500. But in the 1520, what the difference is rather than being mounted behind the rear fascia, we have this housing. So the sensor goes right into this housing, attaches, and then gets covered back up by the housing and sits perfectly on your bumper. So I've got a couple pictures I'll show you there, but really that's going to be the main difference in these systems. It's how they're housed or how they're presented in the vehicle. Other than that, form, functionality, everything else is the exact same. I've got another little bit of a better diagram right here. Here's an example of a half of an F-150 bumper. So you can see kind of those trademark ribs on the bumper, and then we've got the housing right here. So if I could stand up on the table, I'd show you, but you can stand on this, step on it, kick on it, do whatever. It's nice and tough to be on the bumper and survive any kicks or scrapes it may run into. So without going into too many of the features, I just wanted to illustrate what the difference are between these two systems, and really that's what it comes down to is the housing. So just to touch on a little bit more of what these features are, on the 1520s, we again have the A-pillar indicators. It's only going to be reading in the radar blind spot system north of 20 or 15 miles an hour, and then it's in cross traffic detection mode below 15 miles an hour. Same audible and visual alerts. It's going to look 1 lane over, 40 feet back. The difference is, as I mentioned, these patented bumper caps still have that 15-foot harness length, which is more than enough for most F-150s, and that 24 gigahertz frequency. So now going into a little bit more specifics of the 1500, as I've got my system out here still, really when it comes to integration, you can see in this top left photo or more in the center of the slide, that's our indicator. It's got a very small footprint, just a small HMI light that is planted on the A-pillar. So really just trying to mimic that factory feel. I know one popular vehicle that features a A-pillar indicator is the Nissan Rogue. You see a lot of commercials for those. They have a very similar A-pillar indicator, so used by a lot of OEMs, and that's why we went with the style. So the system is also wrapped in foam in the interior connections to avoid any noise or rattling. The HMI brightness is adjustable, so you can go darker or brighter depending on the lighting situation in your vehicle. As I mentioned, it does have audible and visual alarms. So your visual would be the HMI, audible, you have a little speaker in the vehicle. So getting into some of the specifications, the system utilizes the CAN bus speed signal when turning on the radar blind spot mode over 15 miles an hour. So what happens when you go above 15? It senses your CAN bus speed signals and reads those. The system also processes looking only 1 lane over, as I had mentioned. So a lot of these specifications are what you're going to see on the previous slide in the features, advantages, and benefits. So what I'll do is I'll go into just more of like a little bit of unboxing, what comes in your RDBS 1500 kit. As I mentioned, you do have the, what do we call this, Zach? The harness.
Yep.
I always forget.
Main harness.
Yeah. We got the sensor, protractor, got the HMIs, ECU, CAN wiring, bags of screws, got our zip ties, and OBD connector. This is how we plug into the OBD port. So that's everything that comes in the kit. If you guys want to see a little bit more in detail, we do have kit pictures and instructions on our website, so you can just go there and see everything that comes in it. Moving on to the 1520, I won't touch too much into the specifications because, as I mentioned, it's going to be the exact same as what I just went over on the last slide. But the integration will be different here. So the big difference between these two systems, really, in my opinion, comes down to length of installation. The 1520 is actually a little bit easier. As I mentioned, the sensor system gets mounted right into the housing, and really the majority of the time of the installation comes from getting it mounted to the 45 degrees. But in this system, it's already set to 45 degrees once these are secured to the bumper. So that really just cuts back on a lot of the installation time. It makes it, I think it cuts down, what, like 60 minutes or so, roughly?
Yeah, big time.
So definitely helps a lot on the installation time. So this is really what we wanted to touch on when it comes to the 1520. This is a breakdown of how much it costs to achieve a radar system in an F-150, and the fact that it's not even available on the XL trim level. So in this box, these are the F-150s that do not come standard with the radar system from Ford, or as they call it, the Bliss package. So XL, not even available. On the XLT, it's going to cost you roughly about $2,800, $1,500 on the Lariat, and $3,700 on the King Ranch, and that's just to upgrade, because you don't have to, or you're not paying just for Bliss, you're paying for a whole lot of other things to add it in. So our system, costs half as much as these systems in most cases, or even less. So it really just costs you a lot less money if you do want to add that safety feature to an F-150 to go with our system rather than getting it from the dealership. But really, this just shows 92% of F-150s out on the road do not come with radar blind spot. So a lot of dealers may look at this product and say, I don't ever hear people asking for this. Who's looking for this? May not be many people, or maybe a ton of people, because 92% of trucks on the road don't even have this as a capability, or it costs them a ton of money to get it added into their vehicle. So getting into some of the limitations of this, right off the bat, the one we always tell people for the RDBS 1500 is it has to be newer than a 2007 vehicle for it to work. Why is this? It's because it's using the CAN bus speed signals. And CAN bus signaling was made standard by the United States in 2007. So right off the bat, requirement number one has to be newer than 2007. Next, the next biggest one is going to be the bumper type. As I mentioned, the system is mounted behind the rear fascia or the bumper. With it being a radar system, it is limited on what the signal can transmit through. So let's say if you do have a metal or chrome-plated bumper, our radar system would be prohibited by that. It would not be able to emit its signal through the bumper. So it does require a plastic or soft, as we will, bumper. Moving on next, it does have a 15-foot harness. So if you have an extremely long vehicle, let's say you're trying to put this on a recreational vehicle, an RV, you're probably going to run into some issues because that detection or the mounting zone is going to be very far from the OBD port. For moving into the 1520, rather than just specific to the 1500, the 1520 is specific to the F-150 truck. So that's not the Super Duty, it's the F-150 body style, but it's in the range of 2015 to 2020. So that's the same body style all throughout when it comes to the bumper. So that's why we have compatibility with it. But if you have an extra long F-150, something that's been souped up in the aftermarket, you might run into some issues there because it's going to be the same harness length. So that's something to definitely look out for. Beyond the fact of it having to be newer than a 2007 vehicle, so known issues we have with the 1500 when it comes to specific types of vehicles. Any vehicle where the CAN bus speed signal is interrupted, like auto start stop, can give the RDBS 1500 issues. BMW vehicles equipped with start stop are known to give it issues. Mercedes vehicles equipped with auto start stop are known to give it issues. Subaru vehicles equipped with Starlink doesn't mesh well with our system. And then any fully electric or exotic or Volvo vehicles also have given it issues in the past. So really the bread and butter for this system are your classic American vehicles from the big three. All work fantastic with our system as well as many other vehicles, but these are just the known issues we have. Other than what you see here, it should work with just about everything else. If there's any questions, as I mentioned, feel free to send them into the chat box on the Brandmotion website or send an email to myself or Zach, and we'll be happy to get back to you. So thank you for joining today. It's been a pleasure to have you, and we'll wrap things up now.